Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcabs. We're back for another edition of the Thyroid Answers podcast, and today I have another guest. Her name is Dr. Ellen Cutler. She is a person who really is I guess a specialist would be the right word, or an expert in enzymes. And she's got a book out, The Micro Miracle, which is a discussion of and the power of enzymes. I butchered it. It's the Micro Miracle, and it is the Discover the Healing Power of Enzymes. I think it's a revised version, and she's got a teaching method. So we'll talk about both of those in a little bit. But first, I want to welcome Dr. Ellen Cutler. How are you today?
It's great. I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet, absolutely. So we're going to talk about enzymes, and because it's one of your things that you're really into, and I think it's a really important topic to discuss. But before we get deep into that, let the audience know, who is Ellen Cutler, and why are we having her on here talking about enzymes?
So I'm a chiropractor. I also went back to school and got a medical degree as well. But I practice as a chiropractor in Marin County, California, beautiful Marin County. And my life is about healing. And this has been my gift in my life. So that's what I do. I've been in practice for 4.5 decades, and I'm still practicing. I still have a very full practice and don't take any new patients, but I teach what I do. And so I'm not a traditional chiropractor. I definitely do a very different practice, working with allergies and enzymes. And enzymes saved my life. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't recommend a digestive enzyme. I think it's the most important supplement people should take. Because my motto is, it's not just what you eat, it's what you digest and what you absorb. That's most important. And people are not so much deficient in vitamins and minerals, they're deficient in enzymes, and specifically digestive enzyme. So I am passionate about good digestion and passionate about taking a digestive enzyme. And
Awesome.
Most people need it.
All right, well, we're going to get into it because some people might be going, what the heck is an enzyme? So why don't we start there? What are enzymes? And then we'll break it down to maybe digestive and systemic, but let's kind of keep the focus on digestive enzymes. What are digestive enzymes? What do they do?
Well, let me just say that there are enzymes are proteins that are enzymes that make things happen quicker and more efficiently. There's not any part of the body really that doesn't depend on enzymes. And just quickly, I think it's important to note there are 3 different kinds of enzymes. There's digestive enzymes, which our own body produces. You can't replace those enzymes. Okay. Once they're deficient, it's hard to replace them. Those are digestive enzymes. So if you take an enzyme, it's not like you're not replacing those. Then there's metabolic enzymes, which have a lot to do with our immune system, our repair process, inflammation, our brain, our respiratory system, all needs enzymes. Then there are food enzymes. So food enzymes are in whole plant food. But unfortunately, because our soil has been so over-agriculturized, the cofactors that make those enzymes in plants are just not there as they were. So our plant food is somewhat deficient in those food enzymes. So when I recommend an enzyme, I'm recommending an enzyme that's a food enzyme that helps you digest the food that you're eating that should normally be in plant foods. But another problem is most of us don't chew our food well enough. So that's an issue too. So we are somewhat deficient in digesting our food. And then there are consequences because of that.
So is it also, so we've got maybe the food we eat has lack of cofactors that help the protein / enzymes work in the food. And then is it possible as well that because we cook some of the foods, that those enzymes, which are proteins, which can get degraded, are impacted by our cooking style?
Exactly. So if you're cooking anything over 118 degrees, those enzymes are destroyed. And that's why I tell people, if you live in Florida and it's very hot, don't leave your enzyme bottles in the car because it's likely they will be denatured. So yes, cooking, not chewing, not eating enough whole plant food. Yes, we're deficient in enzymes. Exactly.
So let's start with the digestive enzymes. Where we'll circle back to food in a little bit. Let's talk about the digestive enzymes. Where do they, how are they released and where are they released from?
So our digestive enzymes are released first as saliva. There's ptyalin that's released as soon as we put a food in our mouth. But again, we don't chew it well enough, so we're not getting enough of that. And then we have the stomach that releases pepsin that becomes HCl. So HCl helps digest our protein. And then we have the pancreas, of course, that secretes our other enzymes for carbohydrate digestion and fat. And then the small intestine does some of the digesting as well. So all that digestion should happen naturally in our body. So those are our own digestive enzymes. And we have protease, we have amylase, we have tryptase, we have HCl, we have other digestive enzymes, lipase that the pancreas secretes.
So what might cause somebody, we already talked about if you don't chew your food enough, right? That can start to create a problem. But let's discuss what might, maybe let's start with this. How would somebody know that they have a problem with their digestive enzymes or their metabolic enzymes?
Well, let me
Like
tell you
digestive enzymes, I should say, right? Yeah.
let me share with you my story. Okay. So
Sure.
ever since I was a kid, I was always bloated and always had digestive issues. Never really discussed it with anyone, with my parents or anything. So they didn't really understand. But I always was bloated. I could never wear anything that I could button my pants. And I was young. And then when I went to chiropractic school, I have a twin brother, and my parents were able to pay for him to go to medical school, but they didn't, that was our family. So I had to do it all myself. So I had to support myself when I was in chiropractic school. It wasn't as expensive as it is now, but it was still a lot. So I would go to school during the day. I would work in an emergency room at night to make money, and then I'd study. So I got very little sleep, and my symptoms escalated, got so much worse, where I couldn't eat anything. I had so many food allergies and food intolerances. The only thing I could live on, doctor, was grapes. That's all. So I got thin. I was fatigued. My hair was falling out. See, I have a lot of hair. And it was, I was sick. I felt like I had chronic fatigue. So I got through chiropractic school and dealt with it. And then I did a postgraduate work in orthopedics. During that time, and I had a baby. And during that time, I met one of my mentors that knew I was going through because my symptoms were so bad. And I was diagnosed when I was in chiropractic school with colitis, or ulcerative colitis, which, as people know, is inflammation of the colon. Ulcerative colitis is a severe autoimmune problem that, they said the only answer for you is steroids or surgery at some point, So here I'm in a chiropractic school, and I'm a chiropractor. Last thing I'm looking at is drugs, right?
Right.
So he said, he diagnosed me, said, you are carbohydrate intolerant. You're fermenting these carbs. I've always been a vegetarian. Now I'm a total vegan. I've been a vegan for years and years. But so I ate all these carbs, and you're fermenting and just getting more. That's causing the bloating. So he said, did you ever hear of a digestive enzyme? And at that time, it wasn't on the radar at all. He said, you need help digesting your foods, especially carbs. So I took this digestive enzyme, which I now have my own full spectrum digest everything. I took it regularly. I was adamant about it, 1 or 2 with each meal. And within 2 weeks, I never had a problem again. So I decided, because I had a chiropractor, I decided to give all my patients digestive enzymes because I saw such changes in my life. So anybody came in whether they had a backache or a headache or a sprained ankle or whatever, I gave them the digestive enzymes and I saw miracles. Chronic fatigue, vitality, hair growth, skin, hair and nails, sexual libido, all across the board. I said, there's something to these enzymes. That's why I wrote this book, Micro Miracles, all these stories of people. And even, I mean, people who were so sick with fibromyalgia, whatever, changed just by giving them a digestive enzymes. And of course, then I did more work with food sensitivities, et cetera, after that. But it changed my life. So that's why I would say I'm probably the oldest person using enzymes who lives on this earth.
Well, I don't know if you are, but you might be. But I guess
close.
somebody who's listening to this, and to be fair, I'm a huge fan of enzymes. I work with a company that makes them, so I'm a huge fan. Okay, but somebody, I'm going to play devil's advocate, and they're going to say, "Alan, come on, like, oh, you saw all these things." So let's, if somebody, like, if you had to give a answer as to how just giving digestive enzymes could create so much potential miracles, as you say, how is that possible? Because everybody is touting this is the miracle supplement for this. Here's the miracle supplement for that. Here's the miracle supplement for that. So how is it possible that the digestive enzyme that you were giving everybody could create so many benefits? Because that would be what somebody might be thinking.
Yeah, but truthfully, you are what you eat. And if you're eating this food and it's not digested and you're not absorbing those nutrients, that can cause irreparable damage to the body over time. Because what happens is the body starts borrowing from the metabolic enzymes and digestive enzymes. So you become deficient in some metabolic enzymes, which are important for the immune system, important for repair, important for vitality, all of that, for mitochondria. So you are depriving your body of what it needs to digest your food. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Absolutely. So for the listener, like when you're eating food, if you're not breaking it down and bringing it in,
exactly,
you're going to have deficiencies. You're going to have deficiencies of amino acids. You're going to have deficiencies of fats. You're going to have and triglycerides. You're going to have deficiencies of glucose and some of the other building blocks and so many things that are important. There's a whole list of other things that are going to potentially be problematic. But the reason it's saying you could see all these miracles because we need food. You're jamming food down this tunnel, but if you can't break it down, you can't digest it, you can't absorb it and assimilate it, it doesn't really do you any good. And more times than not, it sits in the GI tract, it gets acted on by a bacteria, it ferments, it rots, it creates all that wonderful smelly odoriferous gas that you might smell, or the non-smelly gas. And it can drive immune inflammatory issues. So it becomes really important to digest foods.
Thank you. So exactly.
Why would somebody have an enzyme deficiency? Why? You said about, hey, they may chew too fast, their food may not be good, but what's the maybe you could just give like a basic, I think everybody just thinks we dump food down this food tunnel and it's always going to get broken down and assimilated. Like it just happens. But there's a process that occurs to help break down that food. So what's the role of the enzymes, saliva, stomach acid, bicarb, and enzymes coming from the pancreas in there? What's the real role there of these enzymes when it comes to the food? What's that? Can you kind of lay out that process as food goes down?
Yeah, well, the enzymes pre-digest your food. So you take them, although interesting enough, they've done some more studies. Of course, I read every single thing you can imagine on enzymes. Even if you take it after, it makes a big difference. There's, honestly, there's so much more about it that we don't know. But I think even before that, I think the number one reason is people don't eat enough raw food. They don't eat enough plant food. I live in Marin County. It's a little bit more, people are a little bit more into health. There's less obesity in this area. It's a more affluent area too. People are working out all the time. People, it's different. And maybe, although a lot of people come to see me, they're still deficient enzyme. I think that's a number one reason. It's what's at the end of your fork is the most important. And if you don't chew your food well, which most people do not, but there's also other aspects to it. The work that I do, I developed this technique that looks at underlying root causes of illnesses or chronic diseases or chronic symptoms or specific health issues. And there's so much more to it than just what we think. Stress, emotional stress. My household, one of the reasons I believe I had problems with digestion and food sensitivities is every time we sat down to eat in my family, my parents would fight. My father would walk out and my mother would sit there and cry. So no wonder why I had issues with foods as well. So it wasn't so much that I needed the digestive enzyme. I had food sensitivities that were an issue. And the digestive enzymes always help with food sensitivities or food intolerances too. So there's so much more to it than we know that has to do with the digestive process while we're digesting, even if we have all our intact enzymes. But if you're under stress, or if you've been exposed to toxicity, or if you're dealing with a bacteria or virus, right? Or there's some neurotransmitter issue, all of these can be implicated in not digesting your food, even if you think everything's working correctly. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And I would tell for the listener, when we think about digestion, what's critically important, we have two sides of our nervous system. We have something called the sympathetic nervous system. We have the parasympathetic nervous system. And on this podcast, with Cutler, we talk a lot about how the body doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. We're typically we're operating in either low stress, homeostatic manufacturing mode, where the primary goal is to break food down, bring food energy into the cell, convert it into cell energy, and then make stuff, peptides, hormones, enzymes, all this fantastic stuff. And the cells are under excessive stress and they're in danger physiology. And what cells do changes based on what mode we're in. And if we're in more of a stress-based mode, then we're slowing down manufacturing. There's not a lot of need for peptides and enzymes and these things because, hey, I'm not stopping to have a meal if I'm being chased by the tiger. I don't need to make sex hormones if I'm being chased by the tiger. I don't need to sleep if I'm being chased by the tiger. I need to produce things that are going to defend. And so that when Dr. Cutler was talking about stress in the environment at home, that emotional stress upregulates that sympathetic nervous system. You're going to downregulate the parasympathetic nervous system, and now you're going to have compromised salivary function, compromised stomach function and stomach acid. You're going to have reduced bile flow and bile physiology and pancreatic enzyme output, and the digestive tract is going to be generally downregulated. And so the problem is, and I'll have you respond to this, is so many of us are under a chronic stress load, and we're so used to it, we don't know we're in it. It's just Tuesday. This is every Tuesday. I'm not stressed. This is just Tuesday, right? And so we think we're doing fine, but if you're having chronic health issues, chronic symptoms, chronic diagnosis, you're not fine. You're operating from a state of allostasis, which means, hey, I don't have enough energy to do everything I need to do. I got to shut down the less important systems and shift energy to the more important systems. And I think that happens to a lot of people when we're talking about why would not only is the food quality, the pace we eat, the emotional stress, but also we just have oftentimes a down regulation of this whole parasympathetic rest and digest system because we're in chronic stress. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very important. And parasympathetic is so important for the digestive process. It's also important in peristalsis. People talk about being constipated. Parasympathetic is responsible to help peristalsis. Yes, sympathetic. But I do believe this is how I feel. Stress is obviously characteristic of all of us. I mean, we live in a stressful world. We live in a toxic world.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that if you can maintain a healthy lifestyle, you can reduce the sympathetic and balance the parasympathetic and sympathetic. A healthy lifestyle to me is not eating at a business meeting and being stressed. Chew your food. When you're eating, it's sacred. When you eat, and you digest your food. You chew your food, you take this digestive enzyme. Exercise is important. Meditation, mindfulness is important. I'm really strong believer in all of those. And eating a more whole plant food diet, I think, is really important. And understanding and being one of the things I do is help people understand what is going on with them with the stress. So I give you an example. I had a young girl that I saw, hadn't seen her since she was 9 years old. She came to me after she was diagnosed with osteogenic sarcoma and had her left leg above knee amputated. And now she's 21. And I've seen her intermittently, but I really haven't seen her, in 21. And she's depressed, fatigued, and she's an athlete. She has this Bluetooth prosthetic that you wouldn't believe. It's totally bionic. She can do things with this leg that we can't do with our legs at all. But what I found is all the trauma that she experienced because she was 9 years old, she never really expressed and talked about, was at the bottom of all this fatigue.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't find that hard to believe. In my book, The Thyroid Debacle, my co-author and I, we talk about the fitness factors, right? You have to have emotional fitness, physical fitness, chemical fitness, metabolic fitness, dietary fitness, sleep fitness, respiratory fitness, right? Habitual fitness, like what are your habits? Like your habits determine really who you wind up being. And we don't have a perfect life, but we have to have, I tell my patients all the time, it's probably more stressful to try and have this, whatever somebody's decided is a perfect life. And you're probably better off having 80% really good habits and a high level of fitness in all these categories, and maybe 15 to 20% bad behavior occasionally, because you got every once in a while you got to cut loose, you got to be social, you can't always be like, I can't touch it, I can't do that. And stress, when we talk about stress, a lot of times we just think emotion and trauma, but really everything puts stress on the system, and stress isn't bad, right? Stress is actually what challenges us and makes us stronger. The problem is we live in a world where many of us have unrelenting stress with no recovery, right? I just had a new client I talked to the other day who was talking about all these health issues he's got going on, and it was our initial consultation. And she said, you know what the crazy thing is? All my GI symptoms, all these other symptoms, I went on vacation for 3 days and all my symptoms were better. I'm like,
right.
I'm like, yeah, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? I said, I don't know that you really need me as much as you need the reality of what's going on in your home environment. Is it your work? Is it your relationships? Is it the toxicity of the environment you're in? But something in your home environment, if you can leave your home for 3 days and all your signs and symptoms go away, then a lot of this is like an emotional, psychological, or home environment or work environment as the driver. And the great news about all that is you can fix it, right? But you have to make changes to whatever those things are. There's not enough supplements in the world to fix it.
Yeah. But I do feel that if you stick to some healthy lifestyle habits, like for me, it's digesting food is important. As you know, I'm passionate about it. Exercising almost every day, or some form of exercise, I think is so important for the head and mind and energy. And doing a little meditation and being grateful.
Oh yeah.
Getting up each morning and being grateful for what you have is so important. I mean, it's critical. And eating more plant food, that's live plant food. If you're putting junk in your body, how are you going to feel good? And if you're putting too much sugar, that's another whole other subject that has, empty calories, the stress the under is just going to get to you. Try to keep your physical body strong. Try to
Mhm.
keep your mind. Do a little mindfulness meditation. It doesn't even have to, just do a little bit. There's so many. One of my good friends, who's a patient of mine, Jack Cornfield, has so many videos that are free for people, and so many different kinds of meditations that can help people. These are things I believe can help you withstand the amount of stress that you are under. And for some people, it could be a tragic thing like this young girl, or some it's just, who knows? They're just having a hard time with their son or their daughter or whatever, or their spouse. It's not tragic, but it's stressful. But if you can do what's important to keep healthy in your body with all of that, I think it makes a huge difference. And I've seen that with people in my practice over all these years, and in myself as well, too.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, everything plays a role, and that's why we kind of talk about that. You got to increase your level of fitness in all of these categories. If you put all
Love
your
that. I love that. I
all your
like that.
things in one, like I'm only focused on digestion. I'm not worried about sleep and respiration and mindset
Mhm.
and physical activity. You're still probably going to have health issues, and you're probably still going to have
Right.
digestive issues
Yeah.
because
I
all these
love that.
systems play together.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about taking a digestive enzyme, which you think is really important, and when I'm talking to my clients, and like, what multivitamin should I take? I have the same kind of thought process. Like, listen, but we start with whole food. How about we start with proper digestion? Sit
Yeah.
down, rest, eat. Don't eat on the run. Don't, if you're going to eat while you're running around doing stuff, you're probably not worth eating, right?
Right. It's not worth
And
eating.
then, and then before you consider a multivitamin, how about you consider a digestive
Yeah.
enzyme to help break down and assimilate your food? So I think that's my order as well. But I want to ask a couple questions on something you said, and one of those is, you're vegan, plant-based. Somebody might be sitting at the other end of this conversation and going, "Wait a second, we do have these diet religions that are going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
The
Kidding. I know.
vegans and the carnivores don't see eye to eye. The paleos and the Mediterraneans don't see eye to eye, right?" And so there's all these different food religions that are out there, but you're saying, hey, plant-based food, especially some raw food, can be really healthy. Then you got these people over in the carnivore camp who are saying plants kill you. Why would we eat these? And hey, I cured my immune and my autoimmune conditions going carnivore. So how does somebody who's listening to all this noise out there make sense of all of this?
I think it's insane that somebody who's pure carnivore is going to live a healthy life for years and years to come. I really do believe that most people need 70% of their diet should be whole plant. I I know people, I know a lot of I know a few people who are very well-known people that are carnivores, It's I've read so much, I study so much. There's nothing there that can ever convince me that a total carnivore. But most people who eat meat do eat a lot of plant food as well. That's a more natural diet. I'm a raw vegan. I'm raw, and I've been raw for 30 years. Not many people are going to be like me. Sometimes I think I'm from another planet anyway. I probably am. But I, so even people who do eat meat, that's fine. I'm not telling everyone should be vegan. I think everyone would do better if they were mostly vegan, but I really can't put my heart and soul into believing somebody who's totally a carnivore is not going to have some health issues.
Yeah. And so I
I
think,
hope you're not a carnivore, are you?
No, I'm not a strict carnivore, but
Okay, good.
I am a meat eater, and my discussion with most of my clients is, listen, I think you ground out all that noise. People are selling the product, right, and marketing a product, but I think where everybody should start and where we should all be as a community is not arguing about which whole food based diet is better, because that may shift. If you've got somebody who's a raw vegan, but they're having chronic health issues, changing their diet can change their biome and can create a change. I mean, the people who are going carnivore with chronic immune issues, they were vegan and they had issues or whatever. And there's maybe a lot of layers there, but really for most people, if they focused on eating primarily whole food,
Yes.
so some of it organic if possible, and
Right.
in season if
Right.
when almost
Exactly.
possible, it's the place to start. Don't
Good.
worry about all the extra noise. Can you buy into that part of it?
That I'm totally 100% in agreement, you know. Most people come to see me are not vegans,
Mhm.
but you know what? They gradually transition to it because they work with me for a while, and I don't know that I think they adopt my lifestyle. I become a role model for them somewhat, and they, try it. You can be a friendly vegan. You don't have to be a total vegan. You can be friendly. Be friendly.
Well,
But
I think when you're helping somebody get well and you're vivacious and you're outgoing
right,
and you have the energy that you have, people go, well, I want that. I'm gonna
right,
try and
exactly.
match and mirror what that person's doing. And so I think that happens a lot, especially in our world in more of a functional atmosphere because,
Mhm.
huh, you know, people look good, they feel good, they're functioning well, they're not taking a lot of drugs. Maybe they, maybe there is something to this thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I think from a dietary standpoint, that's a good place to start. But if you're struggling with your whole food based diet, changing that diet can change your biome. That can potentially create some change that can be positive. But that
I
doesn't mean
do.
that a diet's bad, a whole food diet's bad,
Oh,
or
no.
eating meat's bad, or eating plants are bad. It just means at the moment that you're having the digestive issues you're having, changing something can help change some of the signs and symptoms.
Well, I do feel that though people that try a whole food vegan diet or mostly go through a detoxification process. And I think some of the times they don't feel well, it's not so much the diet, it's their body's detoxifying. So they can slowly transition to more vegan because I think that their body, we live in a toxic world. Even if you eat all organic, and who knows how much all organic is truly, we could go outside. Listen, I I've been in practice for 40 something years. I've dealt with all kinds of people with all kinds of problems. One of the most intense toxicity is mold, and you can't even see it. I have a way with my work that I pick up mold. And sure enough, they said, there's no mold in my house. You're crazy. I said, you get it inspected. If I find it, I've been doing this work for 40 something years, you have mold. And sure enough, they get a good inspector, they'll find it. And that's put so much stress on the body. I have a woman who literally was diagnosed with Parkinson's. After we cleared the mold, the doctor said, well, maybe we were wrong. It wasn't Parkinson's. Her wobbliness isn't there anymore. So it's like there's toxicity we're not aware of. When you clean up your diet, there's some detoxification that goes on. And I help the body find where that's stuck and help them detoxify. And one of the things you talked about is the colon. So if you're highly sympathetic, your colon's not, your whole digestive process not working, that's a place to start too. So I do feel that again, I'm really strongly pro whole plant as much as you can put in your diet. I think it's the healthiest.
So we're going whole plant, whole food based, heavy on plants, and you're saying take it and adding a digestive enzyme just because of our lifestyle
Right.
and our habits that can be helpful for digestion. So let's talk about digestive enzymes. When we're talking about taking digestive enzymes, there's a couple things that people discuss. One, that if you take a digestive enzyme, you'll suppress your body's release of digestive enzymes. Is
That's
that
the
true?
totally opposite. It's the opposite. You save your digestive process. Remember, I said you can't replace your digestive enzymes. But if you're not if you're not digesting the food the way it should be, with chewing your food and breaking it down in the saliva into the stomach and the small intestine, your body has to utilize a lot more digestive enzymes to do the digesting. And we can become deficient in it. So taking the enzyme helps just the opposite. People say, well, am I going to become dependent on this? First of all, the digestive enzymes are food enzymes. Again, I always say this 3 to 4 times. You can't replace those digestive enzymes. You take that digestive enzyme, you'll save your digestive process. You'll save your metabolic enzymes, because guess what? When you run out of digestive enzymes, you steal from the metabolic enzymes. So wonder why you get sick all the time. Wonder why you can't repair inflammation. Wonder why when you work out, you always feel more joint pain or more lactic acid, et cetera, too. And why do I have brain fog, et cetera? You're missing some of the metabolic enzymes. And a big one is the immune system. So that's what I saw. When people take the food and digestive enzyme, their immune system is stronger. They can fight the viruses. They can fight the influenzas. They can fight not getting sick if their kids get sick all the time. Or I've worked with pediatricians who always get sick all the time, being around these. I've helped them so much. And a big part of it is taking a digestive enzyme. So it's just the opposite. Does that make sense to you?
Sure. Yeah. And I think for the listener, if you're not breaking down your food, what she's saying is it takes a lot more work, a lot more effort. Plus,
Right.
you may be the enzymes that we generate, the enzymes that we take, not only do they help break down our food, but they're also part of the antimicrobial process that goes on in the GI tract,
Exactly.
directly and indirectly. And if you have undigested food working its way through the digestive tract, you can have bacteria that can start to overgrow. And now you have overgrowth of bacteria that triggers inflammation. And now your immune system is getting upregulated to deal with this mess. You can start to compromise the immune system. And that's where she's saying you're making yourself more susceptible to outside organisms potentially and getting sick. Is that fair?
And exactly. Yeah, very well said. A lot of people don't understand that. So true. The other thing too, and I write about that in the book, is when you don't digest your food, undigested food can get into the bloodstream, seep, especially if you have a leaky gut or your small intestines is not healthy. Those undigested foods, the immune system cites it like a foreign body or an infection and causes this immune reaction, and they create these what's called circulating immune complexes. So they're the antigens, like an antigen and an antibody, making these immune complexes. These immune complexes can hang out at different parts of the body. Classic place they can bother is the synovial fluid in the joint. So if you have any arthritis, which people over 55 have some, and you have these CICs that are in that hang out in that synovial fluid, the body has an immune reaction. It's like an aggressive immune reaction. It's like an autoimmune reaction, can cause joint pain. Because why do some people with arthritis have no joint pain and some people have horrible inflammation and joint pain? A lot of it is because their blood has some of this undigested food, and who knows what else gets leaked in there too, other bacteria that shouldn't be there, et cetera. So it's like an autoaggressive, it's like an immune response too, and causes that. It can go other places, it can go into the kidney, creating kidney issues too, that people have. And now we're seeing that it even can go into the brain and can cause an immune reaction in the brain. We have the microglial cells in the brain that are assassins and angels, and they can start attacking. So it can get brain fog. So that's why I said I've seen miracles, people taking enzymes, because these kind of things happen. People don't understand that. I write a lot about that in the book, and that's what I've seen and researched and studied for years.
Yeah. So for the listener, when we think about the GI tract, like a real simplistic version, you have cells that are lined up in your digestive tract. It'd be like if you took your two hands and put your pinkies together, and the fingers are what we call the little villi. And what we're supposed to do is break down these food proteins into smaller sections. We call those peptides. And then we should break those peptides down into even smaller individual units we call amino acids. And it's the amino acids that should cross through that GI barrier. But if you've got these bigger peptides and you've got reduced digestive enzymes, low levels of bile, low levels of short chain fatty acids, and other things that affect where those two pinkies kind of butt up, that's what we call a tight junction. And if you don't have the nutrients and the signaling in the GI tract to maintain that tight junction, it becomes looser and weaker and more what we call more permeable. It would be like the intestinal tract is very permeable. Think of like a screen in your kitchen window. It's got little teeny tiny holes to let the air in, but keep the bugs out. But increased permeability would be like me punching my fist through your screen window. I could say, look, Ellen, look how good a job I did giving you more air. And you would be like, Eric, but you brought all the bugs are inside my house now. That's not good. So if you have reduced digestion and permeability issues, now those undigested food peptides can cross that barrier, and they shouldn't be on the other side of the GI tract. And that's what Dr. Cutler's talking about. Now the immune system's going, what the heck is that doing here?
Right.
And maybe you get away with it a couple times, but when you're eating the same foods over and over and not digesting them, that can really trigger a response. And sometimes if there's damage, debris, tissue breakdown, we can start to also get immune reactivity from some of that inflammation is going on as well. So it's really important to break it down. It's really important for the digestive integrity of the GI tract. Make sure we're breaking down and digesting our food appropriately, and that's where these digestive enzymes can be really helpful.
And there's another pearl. There's an enzyme called protease. Physioprotease is what we use. That if you take that between meals, it could actually eat up those undigested proteins and eat up and break those circulating immune complexes. So that can help with inflammation. That can help clean the blood. It also can eat up little tumor cells too, as well. And I talk a lot about protease. I'm such a strong, passionate believer in protease. I think it's extremely important. And all our other, which you mentioned, systemic based enzymes do have protease in it because it also catalyzes the reaction. But that's also important too. So I always take protease every day, 2 of them.
So we've got somebody convinced that they might want to take a digestive enzyme.
Good.
Now they're going to go out and they're going to hit Amazon and they're going to say, well, I'll get the cheapest one, right? How does somebody know what a good enzyme is and a bad enzyme? Like, how do they pick it?
Well, first of all, they should read my book because I talk about it. If you visit my website, I talk a lot about it. And I have some enzymes there. Most of them do okay. You have to read labels because sometimes they'll add sugar, they'll add some additives, and I'm not happy about that. So you want to look for a full spectrum digestive enzyme that has amylase that breaks down carbs. It has all the other carbohydrate digestive enzymes in it, disaccharidase, sucrase, maltase. You want to have that has lipase in it, and then protease or peptidase is also good. Some people have a little bit of a hard time with protease, so we have an enzyme that has peptidase instead. That's good for people who have GERD or heartburn or that kind of thing. So full spectrum, I believe that a fungal-based full spectrum, which means they're grown on fungus, there's no fungus in it, better than an animal enzymes, and we could talk about that too as well. I've seen better results with plant enzymes, or we call them, or fungal enzymes too. Again, there's no fungus in it, they're just grown. That's how they're grown. But there's never been any fungus that's in these, or aspergillus that's in these enzymes. And animal enzymes sometimes have their use here and there, like, HCl or whatever, but I'm not a proponent of animal enzymes. Again, that's more like a drug for me. Plant enzyme is where I go for.
Yeah. So, and that's what I recommend as well. There is a gentleman that I met a while ago who's one of the big manufacturers.
I probably know. I know all of them. I know all of them.
You might know
I've
Troy.
worked with all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I've worked with all of them. They know me too.
So I'm along the same line of thinking that those might be better, but with somebody's going to look at an enzyme and go, I don't know. This one looks the same as this one. It looks like it's got the same stuff. Is there a difference? Like, is there a certain thing they should look on the label, the certain milligrams, a certain amount of each individual enzyme? How do they know? Like, because if it just says it's so many milligrams, how does somebody know that they're not getting a lot of one and very little of the other?
When I work with people, I test them and see which is the best enzyme. That's my work that I do with people. So that's how I'm able to evaluate it. But like I said, they're welcome to look on my website. I have an enzyme. They can look at what's in it and buy something similar or buy my enzyme. But what I have is the one I've recommended, the one that saved my life 40 years ago. So again, it's so determined. I think that to start, I mean, it's good. It's easy to, my website is drellencutler.com. Easy, you'll see it. It's not expensive at all. And if you feel you can find something, take a picture of, you can find something in a store, that's fine too. But I would look at what I have in my enzymes that I created, because I know enzymes more than I know anything out there.
And yeah, and what I would add to that is the manufacturing and the raw materials that come in to make these things
makes a big difference.
Makes a huge difference. And because of, and you know this probably as well as anybody.
Yes.
When you're bringing product in, you might test the first sample of stuff and say, hey, this is good. And then that manufacturer may be like, oh, they're taking it, so the quality could drop, or it may not be near as good. And so some of the enzyme producers are really good at making sure they have the highest quality of raw ingredients coming in to make into these things. And so as you're looking at something, I think if you're looking at a product like Dr. Allen's and saying, okay, these are the things, or here's what her price point is. Here's one that's a third of the price. It's got the same stuff. Be wary, because good quality products, quality products take so much.
I appreciate you saying that, because the company that manufactures these enzymes are such sticklers about looking at the product, making sure that it's not contaminated. That's a big deal too. Yeah. And if not, they'll throw it back, and even if it goes in back order and they're not getting any orders, they won't accept it. That's why I use them. I've been with them for years and years and years. So, and I developed some of them with the owner a long time ago. So I've been doing this a long time too. And there are some really good enzymes out there. If you go into, like, we have some, I don't know about Whole Foods. I haven't been there in a long time, but there's some other organic groceries like we have here. I'm sure they have some good ones too. So but again, look at my enzyme and see what's in it. This is somebody who's spent half their life working with. So I know what works and what doesn't work,
So another question that somebody might have is, does everybody need enzymes as they older just because they're older? Is it an age dependent thing? Or is it more of, as we get older, more stress on the system, more we shift from homeostasis to allostasis, and maybe those digestive systems start to become downregulated?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you brought that up. Both kids would now, my son is 44 and my daughter is 33, and they both have been on enzymes their whole life. And one's a doctor and one's a lawyer, so they grew up on it. So they were young. But as you get older, you do become deficient in enzymes, in digestive enzymes. So that's even more. So wonder why people, as they get older, they're always talking about GERD. They have so much heartburn. They're burping all the time. I'm sure you hear this all the time too. Burping. How come I can't digest this food? I used to eat this food all the time, and now I can't eat it anymore. So that's even more important that they take a digestive enzyme, because it'll increase their longevity for sure. But I do have another enzyme I have on my website. It's called GI Calm. That's where people have a lot of GI stress, like your reflux, GERD, heartburn, bloating, irritable bowel. This enzyme works really well with them, either in addition or taking it even in between meals. Some people need stuff to just soothe their mucous membranes of their GI tract, which starts in the mouth and ends in the anus, really. So, but that's so important. Yes, as you get older, you become deficient in enzymes, so it's even more important. But again, if you're stressed out, if you don't chew your food well, and you're noticing some symptoms that you're bloated or your bowels are off, or you're getting eczema, and how come I have acne now? You might need a digestive enzyme. It's a good way to start. And the other thing we didn't talk about is that when you don't digest your food, you become intolerant to foods. You have more food sensitivities or allergies. That's something I work with to clear and desensitize. But taking an enzyme 80% of those foods can be tolerable when you start taking an enzyme. I've seen this so much in my practice over the years. So it helps with preventing food sensitivities too.
Yeah. Do you think that's because as you have better digestion, you have less undigested peptide floating either in the GI tract and crossing the barrier? So now there's less reactivity, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So many people are like, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. Well, if you have so many food reactions, you have poor digestion and you have permeability issues. And so if you can improve the digestion, improve the permeability issues, then you can give the GI tract a chance to calm down and not be so hyperactive or loss of tolerance.
Yeah,
and people are, and really it's loss of tolerance to foods because you're just not breaking them down.
Right. And it's interesting. I just back to the other thing about an enzyme. I realized that we had somebody that contacted us. She was in England, and she read my book, and she got a digestive enzyme, and she had terrible irritable bowel. Her son had problems, blah, blah, blah. So she got my enzyme, she said it made such a difference. So there you say the difference. I don't know what she was taking, in England. I think you have to have a prescription in England, or maybe not as much anymore. I forget. I know we ship a lot. I don't ship. I know the company ships a lot, but I think it's okay now. But anyway, some countries it's not as easy. But it was such a difference for her. And I was so happy to hear that, because, she said my life has changed. Yeah. And for her son to feel good, that's I don't know if you have children, but if you
I got three, but they're not children anymore. They're all grown up.
You look so young.
Well, thank you. It's the beard I'm trying to grow out for November. That's what it is. So there's a common myth, I think, that goes out. Maybe it's not a myth to you, but people are told that when they have reflux, indigestion, it's caused by hiatal hernia, too much stomach acid. Now, I say that's a myth, but you're an expert on some of these things. So, what's your take when somebody has reflux and indigestion? Is it caused by too much stomach acid? Are these proton pump inhibitors helping them with digestion by reducing this excessive stomach acid?
Well, I absolutely do not advocate proton pump inhibitors. There's so much else you can do. So where I come from is when someone comes in to see me and they have GERD, or they have heartburn, or they have, coughing because they have so much reflux. and they're sick. Some people feel really sick when they have that too, and they can't take a deep breath, and they feel like, what's going on? Am I dying? I look at what's the underlying cause of it. Okay, that's me. I get to the root of it. It's not that they're deficient in acid or more acid. I think that's really a myth. And I don't agree with it. Maybe sometimes they are, but it could be they're deficient in acid. It could be just the opposite of what they've been told, which you've heard too.
I think that's the most for most people.
Yeah.
And
but
we can lay that out. But I think people are afraid of acid taking digestive things because they've been told that they have too much acid and they don't want to take anything that might increase that. So they're afraid of these things. And I'm like, listen, if you don't have too much, you have too little acid. And because you have too little acid, your sphincter muscles aren't closing appropriately. And now you're getting the contents of your GI tract that are coming up into your esophagus. And your esophagus isn't set up doesn't have the mucous membrane structure to be able to handle something that has any acid to it. It's for a more neutral pH. So you're refluxing. And when you take that proton pump inhibitor, antacid, whatever you're taking, you're still refluxing. The stuff that's refluxing isn't as acidic, so it doesn't create as much damage.
And then there are side effects from those, that they, from kidney problems to osteoporosis, on and on. And honestly, so what I found is I look and see, what are you not digesting? Usually it's protein and fat for that. When people don't digest protein, they're more susceptible to that kind of problem, the GERD, or, is it emotional? Is it toxicity? Is it, a deficient in acid? Is it a bacteria? It could be a bacteria, and these are things I look at, and everybody is different. So if you came in and someone else came in, they might have a totally different picture of why they're experiencing in this. And then I use my GI Calm, and then there are other things I love, like mastic gum works really well. DGL works really well. I have excellent results with it, And what's horrifying to me is to see young people taking these proton pump inhibitors, because there's a lot of young children now that suffer GERD and that are on these medications, and the doctor says, well, then they frighten them. If you don't take this, you're more susceptible to Barrett's esophagus, which is, cancer, and esophageal cancer is, of course, horrible. But there's so much more that you can do.
But that's that model. I came from the allopathic model. That's the model. We manage disease and symptoms with medication, and they're not really taught that we should look for a cause, right? That model likes a simple answer. Tell me what it is. I've got a book here that tells me 20 different drugs I can give. If we have a name for what it is, I can give you something. So it's what they're taught. But that's okay, because then there's room for what we do is to come in and look for root cause stuff and say, is it bacteria? Is it virus? Is it emotional? Is it physical? Is it chemical? Like, what is it, right? This is the Thyroid Answers podcast. So I'm not sure how versed you are on this, but where does thyroid hormone in your mind play into this whole digestive cascade?
So I work with a lot of doctors who are endocrinologists. We work together, honestly. When someone comes in, first of all, I diagnose hypothyroid more often than many other doctors. And I could tell you stories, that I'm sure you've seen too. And then I look at what are the underlying cause of that too, and what you can do to help it. And whether it's a medication, whether it's a natural product for thyroid that would help. But there's so many causes that people don't get into that can help them with their thyroid. Okay. Is it digestive too? And of course, people with thyroid, as you know, low thyroid, have trouble digesting fats. So also helping them digest fats, it's going to help them with thyroid. Hormonal issues can be a whole issue with other hormones with low thyroid or hyperthyroid. So I look and see what the underlying cause of it is. Are they converting T4 to T3? I'm sure you've talked about that in your
Ad
podcast.
nauseum. Yeah.
Does that come up? What are they deficient in minerals? I this is what I look at. So I work a lot with thyroid. And interesting enough, I have endocrinologists who say, ask Dr. Cutler what's the best dosage for you, because I have a way of figuring it out that works for them. And he said that whatever she says works fine too. So yes, I've worked a lot with thyroid and hypothyroid. And again, digestion is key. That's the first thing I look at. In my work, I look at how your body's detoxifying, what you're digesting, and what sensitivities, what reactivities, which can be all these different things that can underline Hashimoto's or low thyroid or hyperthyroid too. And then I will work with that and treat them with my desensitization process and do whatever they need to be done, whether it is a medication or a natural product. Some of them I do use some glandulars that I found to work beautifully sometimes, alone or in combination with what they're taking. So I work a lot with thyroid and have diagnosed so many people with hypothyroid that many doctors have missed. And I'm sure you've talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah. We talk on this podcast and I talk about it on my book and everything else that
Well, I
for
have
the
to
vast
read your
majority
book.
of people,
I probably have read your book.
I know. And, for for a lot of people, my perspective, and this is what I kind of talk about in the book, is that hypothyroidism really starts at the cell level. When cells are perceiving stress, there's a natural downregulation of T4 to T3 conversion, not by kind of broken physiology, but adaptive. So cells under stress, they're going to reduce the mitochondrial function, reduce the metabolism. If you're familiar with the cell danger response, every aspect of Dr. Robert Navio's cell danger physiology, thyroid hormone plays a direct or indirect role in every step of that. And so I don't think most people have broken physiology when it comes to thyroid physiology. I think they have adaptive downregulation due to some type of excessive stress response. And it's not usually a thing, which oftentimes gets promoted in our world. It's EBV, it's this, it's that. It's typically a lot of things, the combination, what I call the load over time drives
Sounds just
this
like me.
stress response. Okay.
Well, it's
And
like
so,
I had a woman today that came in to see me who low thyroid, and her doctor said, just ask Dr. Cutler what she thinks, because he's just frustrated with he can't get her thyroid, because so we found receptor sites, blocking receptor sites, which you don't find a lot. I've tried to research it. There's not that much that's talked about receptor sites. And what we found was Lyme, Borrelia burgdorferi, and Epstein-Barr, which you just mentioned. And by working with that, clearing that, maybe using some homeopathics and regulating and looking at her medication, what she's taking, she already feels better just doing that. So there's so much, there's thyroid resistance, there's so many things I look at that is not really, I mean, that's not things that are looked at with hypothyroid, but it's and Hashimoto's can be cured. I've had cures. I'm sure you've had also.
absolutely. I had it,
I'm so
and I
glad
don't
to
have
hear
it. So,
that.
right. So I had it, no, but I think for the vast majority of people, when we address the issues, and especially for those people who are told you just don't convert T4 to T3, you must take T3. I think that's nonsense. They got through the first 2, 3, 4, 5 decades of their life and they were able to convert it. So they didn't lose functionality. There's things influencing that conversion. And when we identify those stressors, whether it's emotional or organism or GI based inflammation, which can be a huge issue, and we address those immune inflammatory processes, we raise their level of health and all these kind of those fitness
Absolutely.
factors, mysteriously, they're able to convert T4 to T3 again. The thyroid antibodies and the thyroiditis go down. And somehow, mysteriously, the thyroid gland starts to make thyroid hormone again. It's crazy how that
It's
happens,
crazy.
right? And they
Yeah.
need less and less medication, and a lot of them don't need it at all. So, really important. I want to touch on one thing just for the listener. Thyroid hormone plays a role in every aspect of digestion, directly or indirectly, from saliva production to stomach acid production, to bile flow, to pancreatic enzyme output, to motility, to the immune system, every aspect. So when you start to have this cell stress response, reduced conversion of T4 to T3, every aspect of digestion can be infected along with everything else. So it's that important, but you're not going to fix it by just dumping more T4 and T3s in the system. Many times that actually makes the issue worse. So I just wanted to touch on that, but I want to save some time because we got a bit of time, a little bit of time left. And I want to talk on two things. One, I want you to talk about the book, what it's about, and then we're going to talk about the technique that you do that's maybe a little bit different than some other people do. So talk a little bit about the book. When did it come out, and what are people going to learn in the book?
So this book came out, about 20 years ago, but this is a revised edition to it. And there's reasons for it because I had another company and I lost that company. So it was, I needed to revise it.
But you also learned stuff too, probably since the last
yeah.
time, right? So
Well,
then you can update it,
Yeah.
right?
So it's finally updated. I had the time, I don't know when, but I had the time to update. So it talks all about digestive enzymes and also different conditions and how I, Dr. Ellen, worked with these people with the use of enzymes and my ECM technique, which we'll talk about, in helping people with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, skin problems, hormonal issues, thyroid, and other. And then there's a new updated chapter on longevity, anti-aging, and a whole new chapter on enzymes and the pandemic and how I work with long haulers. And I've had such good success with using enzymes and my ECM work. So the chapter on the pandemic is great. People will love it. So I'm so happy. This is my best-selling book. I've written a lot of other books, but this has been, so that's why I was so happy that I have it revised.
And so where can people find the book?
Yeah, I can go on my website, drellencutler.com. And then, of course, it's available on Amazon. And the Kindle version is almost ready. So, because it just came out, but you can purchase the book there too.
Perfect. And so let's talk about ECM method, which is the Ellen Cutler method. What is it? What makes it different than maybe somebody else might be doing to help people?
Yeah, nobody does what I do.
Well, I'm guessing if you called it the Ellen Cutler method, then
but the reason
some other people wouldn't be doing it, right?
I've devoted my life to this work. So just to understand, after I did use a digestive enzyme with my patients and seeing the results was phenomenal. But then I saw there were some things that people still needed more help with. So that's why I researched and searched for other ways to determine food sensitivities or other sensitivities, other reactivities. I believe it's almost like a Buddhist point of view that a lot of our health has to do with reactions to things, whether it's an emotion or it's a food or it's a hormone or it's a person. This is what causes our health issues or issues altogether. And a lot of it is subconscious. What is the way? I was like, how can I find a way to determine that? So as a chiropractor, I did muscle testing and started to do that. But the muscle testing, you can fatigue the muscle. And I wanted a computer version. I wanted something else that I could have a library of items that I can check. So I searched all over and have used many different machines. The one I use now is an Avatar. It's based on Vohl's method, Vohl, which was a meridian testing machine that was developed, maybe 60, 70 years ago. And with this, with many different doctors I've worked with over the years, created a program. So this is my program that works with this particular machine. So I test, it's almost like a galvanic skin response. I test people with different meridians and look at what is the underlying cause. And with that, there's a different change in the testing that you can see on the computer screen. And that shows me what's going on. So with that testing, so if somebody comes in with fibromyalgia, I can look at and I have protocols that I've created of what people, like if you learned it, you would look at these particular protocols. I have ideas of what could be the underlying cause. And again, everybody is different. And with that, then there's a desensitization process of clearing these reactivities or these sensitivities that people do. I do here. I work with people on Zoom and they do it at home. And we're actually developing a new instrument that even will update our working at home for people to do it. And I teach this. I've been teaching for years and years, but again, the company changed and I had to take a break because it was traumatic to lose this baby that I had developed. So now I started to teach again over the last year. So, and I'm teaching to everyone because after the pandemic, I saw that people don't have to be doctors. They just want to help their families. So it can't hurt you. So I'm open to anyone wanting to learn it. And I teach via Zoom, and we have someone else that teaches the actual machine and how to navigate the machine and how to work with it. But the program is huge. I have libraries on anti-aging, libraries on thyroid. So I come up with things with thyroid you probably never thought of.
I don't know.
Yeah, it would be hard to I have, because I knew you were going to talk about thyroid. I must have 200 items to look at relative to thyroid issues. That could be the underlying cause of it.
Oh, I wouldn't find that hard to believe. I think the problem is in today's world, in allopathic medicine, the thought process is it's an immune system out of control.
Yeah.
It's going to destroy the gland.
Well, it's honestly, I went back to school and got a medical degree only because I wanted the education, and I knew that I could, it didn't quite, I couldn't quite practice as a medical doctor. I practice as an ECM practitioner. That's what I am. I'm not really a chiropractor either, but this is okay under a chiropractic license that I do. But it's there. I always felt like it's not that you're deficient in some medicine. It's what is the root cause of it? That's always been my passion and my drive in my work. And that's what I've developed over time. And every day I'm developing more.
I agree with that. I think that's part of the problem. In allopathic medicine, I used to be harsh on allopathic medicine because they didn't look at what might be the cause. They just addressed the thing, but whatever the diagnosis or the symptom was, and they would treat that. And I'd be like, why wouldn't they look at what's causing it? Well, that's not the education process. That's not what's funding the education process, right? So it's not in their toolbox. But functional medicine, which is more along the lines of what I practice, that's the premise of functional medicine, is identify and address root cause issues. Right. And I think the challenge we have in this model today, and I'm glad so many people are coming to functional medicine to help. Unfortunately, what's happening is that they're bringing allopathic philosophy to functional medicine.
I was just going to say the same thing.
And they're saying, hey, those medications, they're bad. So I'm going to replace, 3 medications with 27 supplements, and this is better. And
thank you.
That's just greenwashing of medicine, in my opinion. Right. And we, especially in the thyroid world, we see people saying, hey, you're on T4, you still feel tired, you still feel fatigued, your T3 is low, your free T3 is low, reverse T3 is high. You need T3, and that's going to be the solution. And my argument is, if the body knows how to convert T4 to T3, it had systems in place, and it's not doing it, then maybe we shouldn't flood the system with a whole bunch of hormone that it didn't want to begin with, and instead ask, why might this be happening? Which is the same question I'm sure you're asking and using your technique to do, is say, why would the body downregulate the metabolism? Is it physical, chemical, emotional, microbial? Is it toxins? Like, what is it? And that's what should separate what we do, is looking for the root cause, not just saying, well, they're bad because they only give T4. We're going to give you T3 and T4, or we're going to give you T3 only, and we'll just keep giving you T3. Who cares about the labs? We have to stop bastardizing what functional medicine started out as. It started out as identify the root cause. From a chiropractic standpoint, this was like our early chiropractic forefathers and mothers were like, address the root. Like we used chiropractic adjustments as a way to help release some of the stress. What we learned was physical, chemical, emotional stressors create this tension in the nervous system that causes the alignment and muscle tension alignment to change. We can adjust, but if all we do is adjust, we're just an expensive aspirine, right? We need to help that person understand, hey, you're not getting enough sleep. You got a bad relationship with your spouse. You've got, bad exercise, bad posture. You sit too much. Like that was really chiropractic principles as well. Right. So I think what it sounds like what you're doing, and I'll have to grab a copy of the book and read it for myself, right? And see what you're doing. But I think what you're doing probably aligns a lot with what I think functional medicine is let's not just load somebody with a bunch of supplements, right? Let's not greenwash medicine. Let's really try and identify the best we can what's creating excessive cell stress, reduce it or eliminate it to the best of our ability, and then support the recovery of the tissues. And when we do that, the person's still going to be experiencing stress, but they're going to be more resilient to that stress. That stress is going to make them stronger and tougher. And over time, they'll be able to do more. But we have to identify the load and reduce it and give the tissues chance to heal and repair. If we're always fighting for survival, there's no way we're going to heal and repair.
And I'm so happy you said that about functional medicine, because I've taken many courses and I know a lot of people who were there from the beginning. And what happens is that people come to see me. Now I've been to my functional medicine and they have all these supplements that half the time they're sensitive to. By the way, if you're not digesting your food, you're probably not digesting these supplements either. That's one thing.
Correct.
And they go and they've done all these tests. And no one ever went over them with them. And they don't know what they spent thousands of dollars on labs and whatever. And it's fine. It's just that, again, they're practicing it in an allopath. They're not practicing it in functional medicine. I'm so glad, because that's been difficult for me to see. And what I do again is I look at the person individually and what's the root, what's going on, and it's not just one, it's multifactorial. There's a lot of different things that are happening. When somebody's hypothyroid, it's not just they're low in T4 and they need Synthroid, or they're low in T3 and they need T3. There's a lot more that's going on. And I'm so happy to talk with somebody that understands where I come from on that.
Well, that's great. Well, it's been a great conversation, but here's how I want to finish this off. Somebody's listening to this. I want you to give 3 takeaway tips, something everybody can start today or tomorrow. Let's say it's starting to get late already. What are 3 things that almost anybody can do to start to improve their health and well-being, regardless of the diagnosis? What are the 3 key things that you think everybody needs to be doing to have a higher state of health?
3 things. First of all, listen to this podcast a few times, because I think there's a lot you can't get at one time. But
I agree with that. Go ahead.
The other thing is, I feel eat at least 70% of your diet should be whole plant food. Try take a digestive enzyme with each meal, or just even with one meal. Chew your food better. Exercise, find exercise, do some high intensity exercise at least a couple of days a week. It's important. Look at something like intermittent fasting. Eat maybe a little less too. Sometimes try that. Doesn't have to be every day. And again, write down the things you're grateful for every day. I think it's really important. And set an intention for a day, and try some meditation and mindfulness, because it'll help you have an easeful life in a stressful environment. So those are maybe more than 3, but that's what I did.
You did cheat. You added more, but they're all good, because those are all things I would say. And I would say, especially in today's world where there's so much focus on what everybody hates, it's no wonder we have the chaos going on in the world, because the focus is on hate versus gratitude, right? Every day, as long as somebody's not throwing dirt on your back, you should be happy, right? Because when it's gone, it's gone.
Smile more and stand
Absolutely
up straight. You can't, when you're slumped over, when you're up straight and you smile, you can't be depressed, and you can't feel hate.
So Dr. Ellen, I want to thank you for coming on the Thyroid Answers podcast. I think you did a great job having the conversation. The website is drellencutler.com. You can find her books and her other things at her shop. And you can learn about the ECM method, right, on the website. And the name of the book again was?
Micro Miracles, Discover the Healing Power of Enzymes.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're going to sign off. Thanks so much for coming on. Maybe we'll get you back on sometime in the future and we'll talk more about some of the enzyme stuff and maybe more of about what you do. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for coming on.